ahead and get started so that everybody can get on with their evening. My name is Courtney Van Schagen. I will take 2 minutes and tell you a little bit about me, and we'll get to it. My older son, Asher, went through the primary program at the Springs, and he's a second grader now. My daughter, Tessa, is 20 months old, and she started 3 weeks ago. So I am right there with you all in this, in lived experience. Professionally, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been working in the community for about 15 years or so. The bulk of my work right now is at a federally qualified health center that's based in an underserved community that serves heavily Latino population as well as everybody else. So I run the behavioral health department as part of a primary care setting. So a lot of my expertise is in the Latino community. The bulk of my work for the first 10 or so years was in child and family therapy and child development. So those are my street cred. I also have a very small private practice. I have some cards here if there are questions that you don't want to ask in front of everybody, or things that don't really have anything to do with separation anxiety, or you're interested in services or resources or anything like that, snag one and shoot me an email, and I would be happy to touch base with you outside of the context of the Springs. I think that's a good little bio for me. Can I just get a sense, other than the faculty that are here, how many of you guys have infants?
What do you consider an infant? 0 to 12?
Say, yeah, pre-verbal thing. Yes, and I.
Here?
No, just in general, kind of like what are the age groups that we're talking about? So how many of you have toddlers? Okay, so that's our target audience. Anybody that's kind of slightly older, primary? Okay, cool. So when I was putting this together, I had in my head school-related separation anxiety because the start of the school year was coming. Separation anxiety falls under a really broad category of behavioral health issues called adjustment disorders. So essentially an adjustment disorder is anything that any of us are having a hard time coping with and disrupts our ability to function and get through the day. Separation anxiety is one piece of that, and then school-related separation anxiety is a piece of that. So there are some references to to other types of separation anxiety, and I will touch on those, and there are some resources for those, but you'll see sort of a slant in here toward the school piece of it because we all have that sort of shared context. And I am a giant technophobe, so speaking of anxiety. All right, so what we're going to cover, what it is, when to expect it, how you might prepare, and we're a little bit through the how you might prepare part. That's sort of like a dollar short, but you'll know for next time. And then how to react, and beyond how to react and what's normal in families, when is it really a problem and when do you probably need to consult with somebody or think about talking to somebody outside of just the family. So what is it? It's a really common reaction. Most young children experience it. I'm sure most of you have seen the behavior. It's crying, it's throwing tantrums, it's clinging. And it happens specifically in response to being separated from a trusted caregiver, or, and this piece is not in the definition that I use, a disruption to the expected routine. So it can be a perceived separation from a caregiver. If you're talking about the birth of a new baby in the family, you're not separating your child from you, but your child may experience it that way and see it as being separated, that the new baby is getting in between you and he or she. So there are a few different places in early childhood where it's common, and I know this is a lot of information. What did you tell me today, 30 to 50 words, or it's too much? So I have broken the 30 to 50 word rule with the slide. In infancy, it's not as common to see signs of separation anxiety, but some babies do demonstrate it, and it happens right around the milestones where babies develop a sense of object permanence. So for anybody that's not familiar with the term object permanence, if you haven't seen from Psychology 101 a million years ago, ago, if I put a ball under a blanket and the baby knows that the ball still exists and looks for it, that's object permanence. So how that translates to adults is you leave the room, your baby knows that you still exist, and they look for you. They have a sense that objects continue to exist even when they can't see them. That's the trigger point for any type of separation anxiety, because they will begin to miss you and they will sense that you're not there, and then, speaking of which, this is the in-laws that are trying to do this. So most infants, a lot of infants skip that period. If they do experience it, it manifests itself a lot of times in disruptions to their feeding schedule or to their sleep schedule, and that's about the only way they have to let you know that they're experiencing some sort of separation anxiety. So if you bring them to school for the first time, if you have a nanny, if they're with somebody they're unfamiliar with, a lot of times that's how it'll manifest. For toddlers, there's a wide scale as far as when it can appear. Somewhere between a year and 18 months, a year and 2 years, anywhere in there, you can see separation anxiety in a toddler. And well beyond that, because then it will just kind of drag on to preschool years. Why? Because they're more aware of the separation as it's happening, and they're able to anticipate a change in their routine. So by that point, you've established routines at home, you've established routines with their caregivers, you've established them at school. They know what to expect. They know when you're putting them to bed, they know what time you eat, they have a general sense of that stuff, and when it's disrupted, that can then trigger the same behaviors. They are much louder and more intense than an infant's separation anxiety. They have a lot of ways of letting you know, but not a lot of verbal ways. So it's still a really instinctual response. It's a lot of crying, it's a lot of tantrum behavior. Oftentimes you'll see them regress to old behaviors that you thought you were done with. They don't have a lot of good language yet, most of them, to be able to tell you how they're feeling, but they can show you. And then once you get to the preschool age, the difference there is that they're also aware of how their behavior affects you all. So a lot of times you'll hear it described as attention-seeking behavior. As clinicians, we would really argue that it's not attention-seeking in the negative sense. They're not doing it to be manipulative. They're doing it because they need the extra attention, but they're aware of how the behavior is landing on you. So they're watching you to see how you respond, and then they're adjusting their behavior accordingly. So when you get the guidance from people in your lives about making drop-off quick, or shutting down a behavior, ignoring a behavior, those kinds of things, that what it's trying to address is that component of a preschooler who's watching your behavior, and if you respond to it, then they're going to amp it up a little bit more. You reinforce the behavior. So it's a couple of different layers as far as where they are developmentally. There we go. All right, so what are the common triggers? Starting school is a big one. A new daycare, a new babysitter, a sibling starting school, and that's one that a lot of times we don't think of, but very often the younger sibling will watch the older one go off to school and will experience a separation anxiety as a result of that. It's a change in their routine, particularly if they're close or they spend a lot of time together. New babies, moving to a new house can be really disruptive. Parental separation or divorce. And then in addition to that, because that's not enough on the list, any developmental milestone can trigger a disruption where they feel insecure. So this is really rooted in attachment. The reason that we see this behavior is because they're securely attached to you all, I would presume. They're securely attached to someone, which is a really positive thing. And so then when they sense that that attachment is being disrupted, they react. So as a way of framing it in a positive light, you've built good relationships with your children, and they don't want those to be disrupted. And that's why it happens. So what do you see? Crying, tantrums, clinging, they don't want to, so that's the peeling the fingers off the door frame. That was my son's behavior when we dropped him off for school when he was 3, was to grab the side of the door frame and hang on for dear life. Loss of appetite is a common one. Can happen during the school day or during whatever the transition is. It can also happen at home if they're just sort of emotionally exhausted and you see a change in their appetite. Disturbances, so for those of you that are blessed who have had children who slept, they may stop sleeping through the night. Those of you who weren't, you won't notice a difference. Anticipatory anxiety. which is talking about and planning for the separation before it happens, after it happens, throughout the day. So you may hear them, engage in imaginary play or out on the playground or talking to the dog or whatever it is, and talking about mommy goes bye-bye, little brother, little baby come in, or whatever the language is that they use, but they express it kind of in a parallel way. Cleaning at other points during the day. So this is one that's really taxing. So if you're in the middle of this, the chocolate is to give you reinforcement. If you've skipped over it, then you get a congratulatory chocolate. Cleaning at other points during the day is when it's really exhausting for caregivers, because you can imagine, okay, I've been reunited with my child, or we've gotten through whatever this stressful period was, and now I can't get them off my ankle, and I have 30 other things to do, but they won't let go. Increased reliance on comfort, so go back to the passy or the blankie or a stuffed animal or a lovey, and the reemergence of old behaviors. So baby talk makes a reappearance, thumb sucking, wanting to go back to diapers, just having accidents, all the kinds of things that you may have already accomplished with a preschooler or a toddler, you can go right back to those. Pretty common. So this is the bulk of what we're going to talk about, strategies. What do you do? So being prepared helps for some kids. One of the things about adjustment disorders is that there's not a one-size-fits-all. What works for some kids will not work for others, and vice versa. For a lot of kids, preparation does help. For some kids, it can be more anxiety-provoking. So you kind of have to know your kid and pay attention to, if we sit down and read a book together about going to school, and then I hear my kid talking about it and playing about it and acting it out and asking a million questions, that might be creating more anxiety. You may have inadvertently kind of pushed them to be anticipating the stressful thing, and then you may want to dial it back a little bit. I do have a list of books at the end of this for school-related anxiety, babies, for separation and divorce, so there are several different resources. Talking about upcoming changes can be really helpful, even if it's in a really general way, or you start to just include language in your day-to-day routine or while you're driving somewhere, just to kind of get them used to the idea, when you're having a baby soon, when you go to school soon, you drive by the school and say, hey, look, there's the school you're going to go to, and then move on. So it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out conversation, but it's something that kind of primes them for something that's about to change in my life. Anything prep-wise that you can do to increase familiarity. So, in the context of this phrase for the toddler program and for the infants also. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that can be one way that we get a little bit of increased familiarity. They've seen somebody, they have a sense that something is coming, visiting, walking through the building. If it's a new house, driving through the neighborhood, if it's possible, and pointing it out and saying that's where we're going to live. There's a lot of different ways to accomplish it, looking at pictures, something that starts to give them a framework that they can use to kind of make sense in their own head. And because young children don't process a lot of information verbally, they process less information verbally than adults do intuitively. Those kinds of experiential things work really well. Pictures, an interaction, a visit, walking through. The other piece that I think is really important is to validate what they're feeling. So if they're able to articulate, or if you say to them, oh, there's your new school, and they say no school, or no new baby, or whatever it is, a lot of times our inclination is to say, no, school's going to be great, you're going to love it. In effect, what that does is it kind of shuts them down, so that they're not, to the extent that they have language, they're trying to tell you something is uncomfortable about this. And if we don't give them the space to do that, they're going to find another way to let you know. So it's really helpful a lot of times, even with really little people, to acknowledge, yeah, that can be really scary. School is something we don't know much about. It sounds like you're really not looking forward to it. It sounds like you're not sure what's going to happen. Whatever language is appropriate for a preschooler or your toddler, to kind of acknowledge, yeah, this is something we don't know much about. This could be really scary. And also, I think there might be some really fun stuff coming. But acknowledging what they're trying to communicate to you is really important. And it sets them up to have that kind of relationship with you throughout their life, and it's a good place to start when you see them having feelings. Part of the purpose of that, with something like this, you can't really get around whatever the change is that's coming, but it starts to set a tone, set a precedent in the relationship with your child that when they have a feeling, the first thing you're going to do is acknowledge and let them have it. And then there may be something else that comes along with it, but that's something that will serve you in really good stead as they get older and to the extent that your teenagers will let you do it. And then the last piece about this is simple language or catchphrases. In our house, we use "Mommy always comes back, Daddy always comes back." My daughter's 20 months old. She can repeat that, and she walks around the house saying it all the time. Whatever works in your house. 2 or 3 words. If they're a little older, they might be able to, capture something a little bit more complex. But it really doesn't need to be, or it really shouldn't be much more complex than that. It needs to be something that's really easily accessible to them and something that they can repeat. It's a self-soothing strategy. So when they're by themselves, when they're at school, when they're in the middle of that transition, it should be something that they can call on to remind themselves, okay, wait a minute, I've heard of this before, I know what's about to happen here. Daniel Tiger, for those of you that have children who watch Daniel Tiger, they have a song about parents always come back, or mommy or daddy always come back, and I meant to include it and I didn't, but you can Google it, the Mommy Always Comes Back song. And there's also one on YouTube that I just stumbled across earlier today that's called the Mommy Always Comes Back song. So there are some out there. Little kids respond really well to anything set to music, so that's another option. Using positive language when you talk about the transition. So again, you don't want to beat a dead horse with them. You don't want it to be the only thing you talk about during the day. But when it comes up or when you do, you want to make sure that you're talking about it in a positive way and in a really concrete way. So if it's a new baby, you're going to be a really great big brother. You're going to really teach the baby a lot of things. You're really going to show that baby, wow, I love how you share. That's going to be something your little sister's going to love to learn from you, whatever it is. School is really fun. How many friends are you going to make? It doesn't matter what you choose. It's the context for it. This is hard because a lot of us feel anxiety about our kids having anxiety, and so we talk a lot around our kids about how we're feeling about it, and they hear it all. So we do want to be mindful that when we're talking with them about it, we're giving them some positive language around it. And then the last one, consider a new item to mark the change and let your child choose it. If you want to do something like that, include your child in that process. If it's getting, a new backpack for school, let your child go with you to choose the backpack and make that be an activity that you do together. If you're having a new baby, choose something that you and your child can do together and make sure that they're involved in the process and connecting why they're getting the item to the transition that's coming up. Okay, so this is kind of once the transition is going on. Engaging them with questions or with concrete issues. So for toddlers, they're really concrete. What was something really fun about school is a relatively concrete question for an older toddler. The second one, they may not be able to answer the question. My daughter's on the younger end of that spectrum. She can't tell me what something really fun was, but if I say to her, it'll be really fun to see the fish in your classroom, that she can make sense of. So preschoolers and older toddlers can a lot of times answer a really specific question. This is different from the how was your day today? What did you do at school today? It kind of primes them to be focused on something good that happened during their day. For the littler ones, you're going to probably have to pick out something, and it helps if you come across something or the teacher has shared something with you that's engaging and that you can then reinforce at home. We're going to go and visit. The fish is a big deal in my house. I figured out. We really love the fish. So for us, it's the fish. Whatever it is. If it's the new baby and they're really helpful about bringing the pacifier to the baby, that would be the thing. Can you help me find the pacifier? Well, I love how you're cleaning up the pacifier, but it's something concrete that they can kind of internalize. For older preschoolers who are experiencing anxieties, they can start to do some thinking for themselves about what's going to be helpful. And this is really important in terms of letting them develop some autonomy and some self-efficacy and problem solving as they get older. So for kids that are anxious, that are older, about transitions like that, giving them the opportunity to problem solve also helps to make the problem more manageable for them. And the action of problem solving it reduces their anxiety. So when you give them a specific thing to work with, it reduces their anxiety. So what do you think we can do to help your worries go away? Have them think with you. What's the thing that's going to work for you? Because I don't know, because I know it works for me, but what do you think might help? Is there something special that helps you feel extra brave? If they can come up with something, practice it together. If it's something that you can do at home, do it with them. But engage them in the process of thinking about what makes you feel better, what calms you down. Transitional objects, there's a long list of them. Those are the most common ones. They're very helpful. I think a lot of times we want to say, like, no, you got to kind of, rip the Band-Aid off. But for a lot of kids, this is a good bridge from home to school, or when there's a new baby, okay, I might need those things again. It's a signal for them that there's continuity. And they're fine, and they will let go of them when they're ready. So there's not a lot of benefit in pulling it before they're ready to let go of it. It will just engage you in a power struggle. I've never met a teenager that still has a blankie or a passy.
I have a wife who still has one.
Okay, so let me qualify that, because I actually have one in my bureau drawer as well. I've never met an adult who goes to work with a blankie. And if you do, then let me give you a card and you can see me in my office later. They will let go of those things. They'll find a way to make sense of it and let it go when they're ready to. Or we'll tuck it in a drawer, or we'll stick it in the glove box, or something where it's a secure base for us that nobody except our husband who outs us in the middle of whatever. It's good to work with your husband. The other thing that works a lot of times, and again, this is not a one-size-fits-all, but for a lot of kids, letting them be the expert and teaching someone else how to navigate the transition is a good strategy. So a doll, a stuffed animal, another family member, putting them in the role of teaching. This works sometimes with potty training too. There's a book, I can't think of the name of the book. There's a book that kind of models that, where the baby teaches the bear how to use the potty. This is a similar concept. There's something that they're attached to at home that they can then teach how to go to school, how do we get ready for school, how do we, get dressed for school, what do we eat for breakfast, let's pretend we're driving to school, what do we do, and kind of walk through the routine, but then they get to be the one who's in charge. That can be really empowering for little kids. How do we take care of a new baby? The new baby needs diapers, we need, whatever those, strategies are. This is another one I wrote through. See if I can pull it out. Oh, okay. It's kind of a summary of stuff we've talked about. So concrete activities. Concrete activities, particularly with the littler ones, are a good way to focus them on something specific rather than just, we're going to school again tomorrow, we have to do it all over again tomorrow. So that's the fish example. Are we going to say hi to the fish tomorrow? Older children, have them talk about what helped them to be successful. Excuse me. So even if you got a phone call from the school that said your kid has been screaming for 3 hours, come and pick them up. Find something that they were successful at and magnify that. So what was the thing that helped you to eat lunch with your friends? What was the thing that helped you to stay in your classroom even though you were really upset? There's a way to reframe some of those behaviors, even if they're really having a hard time, for them to focus on, oh yeah, I did do that. I didn't even realize it. They may have been screaming, but if they were in the classroom, that's the thing you amplify. If they weren't in the classroom and they were sitting in the office, what was the thing that helped you stay at school? You can start really, really small. You may have to if they're really having a hard time. If they hate the new baby, what was the thing that helped you to keep your hands to yourself when you were sitting next to the baby? Whatever the thing is, find something that they were successful in. It can be hard when we're really maxed out and stressed out about it, but it reframes things for them to recognize their own strengths rather than just, I'm falling apart and I'm having a hard time and I'm scared and nobody wants me, and whatever the stuff that they say to themselves might be, which could be all of those things. Be prepared for the extra clinging, the need for one-on-one snuggle time. This is really important across early developmental span. So most of your kids are gonna come home and need some snuggle time. They're gonna, wanna be in your bed, or they're gonna wanna be carried around the house, or they're gonna wanna sit right next to you on the couch. There's gonna be something where they're gonna want physical contact. When they're that little, they don't have a lot of good words to articulate it, but they're reassuring themselves that you're still there. I would argue that you want to indulge that, and I even kind of hesitate to use the word indulge, because you're reinforcing for them that they still have that secure base, that you're not going anywhere. They will let it go, just like they do with the objects that they're using. Once they really feel secure in the fact that this one thing has changed, but other things are staying the same, they will stop needing to be, attached to you like a starfish or whatever the behavior is. But you may need to build that into your routine. The same thing with, we're going to prolong the bedtime. So what was taking half an hour is now taking an hour and a half, which may be excessive, but you may want to plan for some extra time in your routines. This is behavior that we see an awful lot with kids when there's a separation. Mom and dad are getting separated, getting divorced. You start to see where they're finagling for extra time when they're back with whoever they're with. And the first thing we say is, can you plan for it? Can you work it into your routine? Is there something else that you can let go of to give them what they're asking for, so that they start to feel secure in the fact that these few things have changed, but other things are staying the same. This next one, moving on with the rest of the day, I think is an important one, because we tend to get wrapped up in the stress of whatever the event was. It can't be all about the thing that's changing. It has to also be about all of the things that are staying the same. And so you gotta kind of get on with the day. If it was hard at school, pick them up, acknowledge it, spend a few minutes talking it through or whatever you used to, and then move on to, okay, we're having fish for dinner, we're going to the grocery store, we're going to the play, whatever the next activity is. It's reassuring that there are other things that you would have always done and continue to do, and you're not magnifying the transition. The transition is gonna be big enough as it is, whether or not you spend hours talking about it every day. So acknowledging it and giving them some space to talk about it is one thing, but spending all your time talking about it and feeling about it and stuff creates that sort of feeling of like, there's nothing left, there's nothing else. For new siblings in particular, devote some one-on-one time with your older child. This can be really hard, and it's also really important, particularly if they're far enough apart in age to where they're aware of everything that's different. They're really, and if you've got Irish twins, I don't know that you're gonna need to do quite so much of that, but anything beyond that, this is really important. They need to feel like there's something that they are looking forward to that's just about them, because until the new baby is well into preschool years, it's gonna feel like it's all about the real time. So language that you develop around it, a specific routine that you develop around it, something that they look forward to, that they know roughly happens at the same time every day, and it's just you and them. If you're the primary caregiver, maybe it's a bedtime story, or maybe it's, we walk around the block, or maybe it's, you help me, I don't know, make your cereal every morning. It doesn't really matter what the activity is, but it needs to be roughly the same activity and something that you can plan for and they can plan for, so that when they're having a hard time during the day, they can kind of think forward to, okay, this is coming. I have my mommy time, or I have my daddy time, or my nana time, or whatever's been disrupted. Okay, so what about you guys? Anxiety is really contagious, really contagious. So if you're anxious, they're gonna be anxious. They're gonna sense that you're anxious. It's contagious all over the place. When your child gets anxious, we experience it in a more autonomic way. They behave and you can see what they're doing. Often, it's unlikely that we're gonna see you guys like melting down in the parking lot in an anxious way, but you will feel, your heart will beat faster, you'll feel, your palms will get sweaty, you'll feel hot, or you'll feel cold, or something will shake, or you'll have a hard time slowing your thinking down. All of those are responses, they're anxious responses to what's going on. We talk about it a lot when we're anticipating something that's about to change. When that happens, it's a two-way street. So if you're anxious, your child becomes anxious. And if your child is anxious, it can make you anxious. Some of the strategies that work well for children work well for us too. The biggest one is distracting yourself. So Now, some of this was sort of like, the first couple of days of school. Plan something right after drop-off. If your child is still having a really hard time with drop-off, keep doing this. Schedule yourself a meeting as soon as you get to the office. Schedule yourself an errand to run, plan to go to the gym, whatever it is, right after drop-off, so that you're not sitting alone just marinating on how hard that transition was. Whatever the change is, there needs to be something that is kind of flips the switch for us as well. So when is it not normal adjustment anymore? Clinically, the diagnostic criteria for an adjustment disorder, the time frame is 6 months. So that's not for every change. It's for some changes. But my point in sharing that with you is to say this can take a while to work itself out. So by and large, most everybody is going to work out whatever the issue is within that time frame. And it's normal, and it's hard, and also, there's nothing wrong with our children. A few weeks is really, really normal, and that's true for any transition that you can name. So for the most part, things like a school change or moving to a new house, those kinds of things kids will tend to adjust to more quickly, because everything else has pretty much stayed the same. Things like a new baby, a separation or a divorce, a death, take a longer time to work through, and that still falls within, okay, we're getting adjusted. Now, if you don't see any improvement in either the intensity or the duration of the symptoms, if they're still screaming for 3 hours at week 5, and that's what they were doing at week 1, of dropping them off at school, they might need some other coping strategies. So that's one way to measure, do I need to talk to somebody? If you haven't noticed any improvement, and it might be really slow improvement, but if you can point to something that's gotten better, they're not crying as long, they're not crying as loud, they're tolerating whatever the change is a little bit better than they were, then they're moving in the right direction. If you don't see that within several weeks, then like I said, they may need some additional coping skills and some things that you haven't tried. You may want to talk to somebody to kind of think outside the box a little bit. If you can, don't let them quit whatever the transition is. Don't pull them out of school and say, oh, they're just not ready. They need about 6 months at least before you can say, well, they just weren't ready. Maybe less if it's impacting their lives in other ways that are really, disrupting their functioning. But to the extent that you can control it, don't let them quit the transition. When you guys stick with it, when they stick with it, to be more precise, you're helping them figure out ways to be successful, and you're really starting to set building blocks for healthy self-esteem. So it's important that they have the opportunity to struggle with it, with an eye to the fact that on the other side of whatever it was, when they finally get it down, they get to own the mastery of that. That was a really hard thing you did, and you figured it out, and we let them own it. So even if you know that in the background you were the one with all the blood, sweat, and tears over it, that's a model that they will then use